Madam President, we're ready to start.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tuesday, September 1st, 2020 Sugar Land Development Corporation meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order. Next is public comment. Citizens who desire to address the board with regard to matters on the agenda will be read at this time. Thomas, do we have anyone?
No, ma'am, we don't have anybody signed up.
Thank you. Item 4A, minutes. Consideration of and action on the minutes of the February 4th, 2020 and August 4th, 2020 joint City Council and Sugar Land Development Corporation meetings. Could I please get a motion?
Motion approved.
Okay, motion by. Okay, we have a motion by Director Gandhi and a second by Director Porter. Please vote at this time.
Madam Chair, if you'll do a roll call vote for this meeting.
Oh, we're going to do a roll call vote? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's go on here. Okay, Director, okay, I'll just go last names. Gandhi?
Aye.
Lane?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Kamali?
Aye.
Jacobson?
Aye.
Okay, and myself, McCutcheon, aye, with Director Zimmerman not present, so that passes with a vote of 6-0. Next is the regular agenda, item 5A, consideration of and action on amending the fiscal year 2020 budget to projections, adoption of the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget, and a recommendation of the proposed fiscal year 2021 budget to the mayor and members of City Council. And we have Jennifer Brown, Director of Finance. So Jennifer, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. At your last meeting, Rosita, our budget manager, reviewed with you the proposed budget for fiscal year 20 projections and fiscal year 21 budget. We're just going to run through them the numbers real quick. We do have a minor change with the TERS assignment since we reviewed it with you last, but we did discuss that with the City Council during the budget workshop last week. This corporation, our key factors going into fiscal year 20 and 21 has really been the impact of COVID-19 on our sales tax collection. We've seen declines in our retail and our food and entertainment sectors. And fortunately, with this corporation, we had plenty of capacity. We had enough money set aside in our economic development incentive line item that we just made the reductions there. We didn't have the funds committed. And so we were able to offset any actual declines with the funding that we had set aside. And so as we go into fiscal year 21, we're having a conservative estimate on sales tax. But we also, again, going into 21, have a little extra capacity within that the economic development incentive line item, and we're able to support our economic development functions that are normally funded by our hotel occupancy taxes, which would be our position and a half that are funded from the tourism fund. Those employees are now focused on business recovery, and so the corporation will be providing a little extra assistance through fiscal year 21 for those two positions. Next slide, please. So I'm going to run through the projections just real quick. The revenues for fiscal year 20, we had budgeted $6.3 million in sales tax. We're now projecting $6.05 million. Now we have not adjusted these projections. Our August numbers actually came in better than we had anticipated for the month. And we don't know what our September numbers are yet. We will get those next week. So in anticipation of, putting a little extra cushion in there, we opted not to revise the projections. And so more than likely what we'll see is a number actually greater than that $6.05 million, which will be good for the corporation. Our interest income, we had originally budgeted at $150,000. We have that projected at $124,000, excuse me. We have participation rent that we did not budget for, and we did receive $49,860 earlier this year from the Smart Financial Center. And for the TERS 1 assignment, $1.25 million is the budget and the projection. And so our total revenues are were originally budgeted at 7.707 million. We're now projecting 7,477,380. And I'm going to like shorten those numbers because when I say them, there's a lot of numbers in there. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Sorry. Is it not going? There we go. Okay. On the expenditure side, this is where you will see the reduction would be on the economic development incentives line. And so overall, we're basically projecting budget. We have our economic development program at 935,000. There's a little shuffling around between categories, and I'll just point out the major changes that we have built into projections. The economic development incentives, this is where we had taken the reduction to offset the anticipated decline in sales tax. And then our contractual services at 17,740, that is paying for things like operating supplies, reimbursement to the city, there's a repayment of sales tax, things like that goes in there. Our debt service for the year is 4.089 million, rounding that up. And we have budgeted capital projects reimbursement of 1.54 million. That includes the repayment for, or the payment for University Boulevard North, as well as the design of Owens Road. Our transfers to other funds, this is where you see the significant change, and this is where the corporation is helping out with some of those economic development staff. We're shifting those costs and splitting those between this corporation and the 4B corporation. And so we have 724,752 budgeted, projected in the transfers for other funds. So overall, our expenditures are declining from 8.96 million to 8.478 million. Next slide, please. So what that does to the fund or to the corporation overall, so we have a decrease in revenues as well as a decrease in expenditures. And so where our net income was actually planned to be drawn down by 1.25 million, we're actually only drawing it down by just over $1 million. And so our ending fund balance, instead of being at 3.885 million, will now be at 4.14 million. The policy requirement, which is 15% of budgeted sales tax, is 908,000 based on our revised sales tax projection. And that puts the corporation ending the year 3.23 million over that policy requirement. So we're about 250,000 better than we had built into the original budget. Next slide, please. For fiscal year 21, we have sales tax budgeted at 5.545 million. This is a further decline from what we have built into the fiscal year 20 projections, but this is assuming that we continue to see impacts from the COVID virus through halfway through the year. And so what we're seeing is in fiscal year 20, we're really only seeing about 4 months total impact. And so this is the difference is between 4 and 6 months. So we're being conservative on our sales tax, continuing to estimate 30% reduction in retail and 50% in food and entertainment for the first 6 months of the year. For interest
question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that August sales tax came in. I'm assuming that's for the previous month of July.
That would actually reflect June sales.
June. And what was the percentage decline versus budget? Do you have that yet?
I do not have that number off the top of my head. While I keep talking, I'll look for it. And I have the sales tax report on my desktop somewhere.
Or the shortfall versus budget. Just an idea.
Okay. I'll find that while I continue to look through or to talk through these, and that way I don't hold up
Sure.
what we're talking about here. So,
Thanks.
all right. So then for our interest income, we're budgeting 125,000, and our TERS 1 assignment is 1.5 million. And this is an increase from what we had shown you last month because we have received the certified tax roll for TERS number 1, and it was higher than we had originally built in. And that is due to the values not coming down as much as we thought they were going to. So we had some pretty big preliminary values in our preliminary roll. We were seeing about 30% increases overall in commercial, and we were being very conservative, estimating that that was not going to actually come to play, and it actually came in better than we had anticipated. And so this final budget, once we've run the TERS values, we have the proposed tax rates for the city and for Fort Bend County. And so we were able to up the assignment that we're building in, and I'm very comfortable that the TERS will be able to support this. So total revenues will be 7.17 million. Okay, and so now going back to Mr. Kamali's question for the August payment, we were 3.61% under the original budget for the month. So we were actually, it was a very good month. But when you compare that to last year, we were down 11.76%. So we had a large one-time payment in the prior year. So our total payment for the month was not that far off from our original budget. So we were very hopeful when we saw those numbers, but we don't want to be overly optimistic. And so we decided not to revise the projections for that.
Thank you.
All right, next slide, please. All right, so our proposed expenditures for fiscal year 21, we haven't proposed any changes in the economic development program. This is the operating budget for economic development. The original budget this year was $597,017. We are proposing to keep that the same, or that plus the contractual services is basically staying the same. We have set aside the 1.7 million for direct incentives, and we have our debt service payments budgeted at $4,053,000. This is going to cover the Smart Financial Center bond issues, as well as the bonds that were issued for Town Square. We have the TERS infrastructure that this corporation is paying for. That's what you're getting the assignment back from the TERS to support. So those two issues combined, that's the debt service on those. The transfers to other funds, this is going to cover the reimbursement for economic development staffing, as well as the additional positions through fiscal year 21 that are normally funded from the tourism fund. So our total expenditures for fiscal year 21 would be 7.12 million. Next slide, please. And so here you can see visually kind of that debt service schedule. In fiscal year 25, we will pay off the debt associated with the Town Square TERS, the infrastructure. And so you'll see a drop off there in fiscal year 26 from 25 to 26. And then the final debt would get paid off in fiscal year 40. There are actually two issues associated with the Smart Financial Center, one for the design, one for the construction. And the design issue was sold 2 years prior to the construction issue. So you have another drop off here in fiscal year 38 to fiscal year 40. Next slide, please. So to summarize, for fiscal year 21, we have 7.17 million in revenues, 7.125 million in expenditures. So it's around 45,000 in drawdown of fund balance. And so our ending fund balance would be 4.239 million. Our fund balance policy requirement calculates at 15% of sales tax at 832,000, and that puts us at over policy at 3.406 million. Next slide, please. So looking at the 5-year forecast for the corporation, this forecast has been adjusted for the revised TERS assignment. And I want to note here that, and I don't think we had a note when we showed you this forecast last month, but when we were doing all of our analysis and our scenarios for the corporations in looking at our 3 scenarios for the impact of COVID, we excluded the reimbursement that we are due from choice number 3 for the roadway infrastructure. And so this forecast as well does not include that. Basically, the 4.7 million would just add to the reserve for opportunity funding. And so rather than the 4 million or so that you have in reserve for opportunities, you would have around 8.5 to 9 million when you add that 4.7 million reimbursement. So it just kind of skews the numbers, and just to be consistent, we opted not to show it as part of this forecast. But overall, you can see that there's not a whole lot going on in the forecast. There's not a lot of growth built in. We're just getting back to normal in fiscal year 22. But we do have funding built in fiscal year 22 for the Owens Road project. And other than that, there's no capital projects built into the corporation's forecast. Next slide. And that Owens, I think we missed a slide, I'm sorry. Can we go back? Yeah, okay. The Owens Road construction is currently budgeted at 3.32 million based on the CIP estimates, but as you're aware, we're working with Fort Bend County to try to cap our participation in this project. Hopefully this will be the maximum amount, but we don't have that agreement worked out yet. Okay, next slide, please. So the recommendation this afternoon is to approve amending the fiscal year 20 budget to projection and approve the fiscal year 21 budget as proposed. We will be bringing this budget forward as part of the city's budget for city council approval by ordinance on September 15th. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
So are there any more questions for Jennifer? Yes, Director Porter?
Jennifer, as best I can tell, the Fed is going to let inflation run for a while here. Do you think that's significant with regard to the expenditures for FY21, or is it going to be too insignificant? I know you kept the expenditures flat, and I just want to hear what you thought about that.
Sure. I don't think it's going to have an impact on your expenditures as a corporation. Most of what we do is contractual or is reimbursement for staff, and it's not really impacted by inflation too much. With the Fed, when they're saying they're going to let inflation go, it means they're not going to try to tighten or by interest rates by controlling the federal funds rate, and the interest rates are already so low that I honestly don't think we'll feel much impact. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any more questions? Okay, well, let's vote at this time. Could I get a motion?
So move.
Oh, wait,
Second.
that was, okay, Director Porter, maybe it was almost a tie. And then who would like to second?
Jacobson.
Okay, second by Director Jacobson. I'll take a roll call vote. Gandhi?
Aye.
Lane?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Kermali?
Aye.
Jacobson?
Aye.
And myself is an aye, so it passes 6-0. And Jennifer, thank you to you and your team for all of your work on this. So item 5B, consideration of an action on authorization of amendment number 1 to an economic development performance agreement with the corporation, API Realty LLC, and Accredo Packaging, Inc. We have Devin Rodriguez, Assistant Director of Economic Development.
Good afternoon, everybody. First, I'd like to recognize that Chetan Nagandi with Accredo Packaging is also on the Zoom meeting. So if you have any questions for him, he is here virtually. This is a very short recap just of the project history. So there was a performance agreement that was signed June 5th, 2018 for Accredo's Phase 3 expansion. I think a lot of you probably are familiar with it. 200,000 square foot manufacturing and warehouse facility. over $50 million worth of real and personal property investment that is going to be part of this project. And in the next 4 years, adding 175 new jobs. So they are nearing completion. And once they reach their multi-year kind of expansion and ramp up, they will be one of our top 10 employers in Sugar Land. So the reason for this amendment is some delays occurred during the construction that were outside of Accredo's control. And so as a result, they requested a delay of their performance agreement by 1 year. And so that is the change that we are making. And we can go to the next slide now. Thank you. So the new term is 2021 to 2030. So it's still a 10-year term. Nothing else has changed. We just have adjusted all of those dates back a year due to the delay that occurred during construction. So no change to the direct incentive at $200,000 over 10 years, and we still maintain all of the clawbacks in the agreement for default or reduction for lack of employee retention or creation that they anticipate as part of their project. So that is the only change that really we're making. It's a lot of date changes, pushing back 1 year due to that delay in construction. Next slide, please. So with that, we have reviewed it with the City Council's Economic Development Committee. The staff recommends approval, and City Council has already approved an amendment to their tax abatement on June 16th, 2020. And so with that, I'll just go to the next slide. And if there are any clarifying questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Would someone from EDC like to comment?
No, I mean, Devin is correct. We did review it in EDC and found this as a reasonable request from one of our top employers, and are pleased to do that for them. And we're happy to have them here and very happy to have them expanded. So I'll be glad to make a motion to approve.
Okay.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion from Director Porter and a second from Director Kamali. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, well, we will do a roll call vote again. Gandhi?
Aye.
Lane?
Aye.
Porter?
Aye.
Kamali?
Aye.
Jacobson?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so it passes 6-0. Thank you very much, Devin.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 7A, workshop. Review of and discussion on a proposed contract with Development Counselors International for the fiscal year 2021 Integrated Marketing Program. And we have Teresa Preza, Assistant Director of Economic Development, and Daryl Curran, DCI Executive Vice President.
Good afternoon, everybody. In today's workshop, we will re-engage in the contract conversations with Development Counselors International related to a year-long integrated marketing program. As you may recall, we were scheduled to bring a contract with DCI for your consideration post a joint workshop in early March. And then, of course, we were impacted by the immediate ramifications of the global pandemic. As such, it was determined that we would delay the contract consideration until we understood more about the pandemic's impact. But what we did know is that we were going to need critical communication efforts in order to be able to respond to many of our business needs. Therefore, we entered into a short-term contract with DCI to focus on creating cohesive messaging about what we would ultimately do in support of our local business community. And of course, the contract has been successful, as is evident in the deliverables activated since April. DCI has created numerous talking points that have helped guide conversations with not just the media, but also with our local businesses and various stakeholders. Specifically for media relations, they have, I'm sorry, can we go one more slide? I got on the roll. Sorry about that. So DCI has created numerous talking points. They have been very instrumental in delivering messages to our media relations as well. They've generated two press releases, which have been picked up by both digital media outlets and TV broadcasts, and we are currently working on our third release right now. Regarding social media, our LinkedIn page has doubled in followers since March to 500, and we've seen an increase in page views fourfold. Of critical success has been the activation of our e-newsletter that has grown from just a couple hundred recipients to over 1,000. This platform has allowed us to truly deliver quality and timely information and it has served as an engagement piece as we receive direct feedback from our local businesses. Most importantly, DCI created our awareness campaign, All In for SLTX, including messaging, design, ad strategy, etc., which has earned media coverage and and has generated the success we've experienced with the Sweet Cash program to date. Next slide. I bring this slide back from our original presentation because it contains a critical perspective during these unprecedented times. Marketing allows us to create and sustain long-lasting relationships with key decision makers like site selectors, brokerage firms, the media, which are essentially our storytellers. Media is where C-suite executives begin to learn about who we are and about the opportunities that we offer. This is why marketing is necessary. It allows us to influence what is being said about us. It's an ongoing effort that helps us sustain and grow our position in the market. Next slide, please. As we better understand the impact of a global pandemic to our economy, we've worked with DCI to amend some of the original deliverables, such as the reduction of travel, and added elements like creative work to best position us for success. What DCI will be addressing in the upcoming slides are the deliverables of a 12-month program, focusing on positioning Sugar Land as a location of choice as Texas recovers, especially regarding economic opportunities related to the migration to suburban markets outside of the Houston urban core. The estimated cost for the contract is $238,000, which is the same as the original contract, split into professional services and hard costs, which are expenses that are paid for as they are utilized. Next slide, please. And now I will turn it over to Dario Curran. She's the Executive Vice President with DCI, and she will outline some of the deliverables in the program. Dario?
Thank you, Teresa, and good afternoon, everyone. I was looking back at my calendar, and I was last in Sugar Land on March 4th, presenting to some of you, and that was the last time I was on an airplane. COVID hit hard a week after that, so I miss you. I wish I were there in person. I wish I was having dinner in Town Square, but good to see some of your faces again. This is your core DCI team. I serve as the overall strategist, but really Kat Saunders, who's on a well-deserved vacation, is the VP of Client Strategy, and she's backed by 4 other people with specialties in digital advertising, media relations, and so forth. So it's a well-oiled team with a head start on your community. Next slide, please. Just a quick reminder, the DCI, we're headquartered in New York. We're considered leaders in marketing places. We're really deep specialists in economic development marketing and thought leaders. And then all of our work is really grounded in research that we do with your targeted audiences of corporate executives, talent, and site selection consultants. Next slide, please. So what is our action plan for Sugar Land? A reminder, next. It really falls in a 3-prong integrated strategy. So first, we want to really ratchet up and generate some positive media coverage that communicates your business advantages in a really highly credible manner. We think that there's a great power in the third-party credibility of PR. Second, we're going to target corporate executives in key markets with digital advertising in order to generate leads and get your pipeline full. And third, we want to really nurture relationships and educate site selection consultants because they are very important third-party multipliers. So we estimate that 40% of all projects involving 100 or more jobs start with site selection consultants. So really important to nurture those relationships. Next slide. I'll delve in a little bit more deeply. We believe in starting with a firm foundation. Typically, we would be there in person, our whole team, to do a boots on the ground immersion tour, but we have pivoted, which is sort of the word of the year, I think, to virtual immersion tours, and we're finding they work out pretty darn well. But the purpose of that is really to do a deep dive in your community, to understand your business stories even more so than we already do, and really to uncover what are the most compelling storylines that we can pitch, and also who are the most compelling storytellers. who are people that we can put in front of the media to speak about the advantages of Sugar Land as a destination for business. We'll also develop a target media list, and that will run the gamut from economic development, trade publications, to industry-focused publications, to national and some international media. Next slide. So then we begin to, once we get back from that immersion tour, or we can distill all of our thinking from that immersion tour, we'll really roll into a proactive and reactive pitching. So we develop pitches, what we call them, that we think will be compelling story ideas for journalists. We go to the right journalists, we pitch them. If it doesn't stick, we refine them, we pitch again until they produce, essentially. We're very good, because we're specialists in economic development, at tying into news and trends. We're looking at this sort of in a macro view for our clients across the nation. We're also being approached by media who are looking for examples or trying to vet a story idea, and we'll be in that reactive mode and giving leads to you and your partners. And of course, we want to capitalize on any positive news that you're generating there with projects, expansions, or any good rankings that you might have, and we want to really amplify those. Next slide. So just two quick examples here, 2 slides. This is how we really helped San Marcos, Texas, be portrayed as a force in both business and quality of life. And you see, again, a range of media outlets here, from the Epoch Times, Texas Best Kept Secret, San Marcos, to Adriana Cruz appearing on Cheddar on the floor of the stock exchange, to a coverage in Chief Executive magazine, to a trade publication, American Manufacturing. So this sort of is representative of the type of coverage and the range of coverage we'd be looking for Sugar Land. Next slide. And we give you one other example, and this comes from Dutchess County, which is a suburb outside of New York City, where we're tasked with positioning the county as the country's next tech hub. And we give this example because, because Sugar Land is essentially a suburb of Houston, and sometimes it can be a challenge to differentiate the two. We've been quite successful in doing this for Dutchess County. You see everything from, again, an industry publication all the way up to the Wall Street Journal. Converted office parks try to lure millennials with cheaper rents, in this case, really positioning it as the country's next tech hub. And some recent research that we did with the Site Selectors Guild indicate that about 64% of those site selection consultants think that suburban is the most likely destination for expansion in the coming year in the wake of COVID-19. So we think Sugar Land is really sitting in a very good spot for business relocation and expansion. Next slide. So then we continue to ratchet up and can identify Sugar Land stories, and they continue to evolve. Nothing is static. You know, things are changing. We are constantly sort of plumbing for additional ideas and close contact with your team. Continue that proactive, reactive outreach in order to secure coverage. And then when we do, we think it's really essential to play back the results at home so that you know how you're being covered in the press that matters. And that, that raises pride on the home front, and also can get picked up in a regional way, which can be very beneficial as well. Next slide, please. So our goal is, and we're always conservative in our estimates. We like to over-deliver. We're expecting 5 to 7 positive stories about Sugar Land in the media in the coming year. And these can range from full feature stories to parts of roundups and so forth. So, but clearly our goal is to get Sugar Land as a business location front and center of media that matter. Next slide. Moving on to that site selection consultant outreach, we will really begin ratcheting that up through the creation of an e-newsletter that's dedicated to this very niche target audience. We'll develop a branded e-newsletter template And then we will aim to really curate your news and deliver it in a very timely fashion, the kinds of news that we know that site selectors want and need, whether, again, it's project expansions, rankings, a good news story, some development in terms of incentives, workforce availability. And we'll aim to get those out on a basis of at least 4 a year on a timely basis. We'll use, see, you've got a cutoff here a little bit, but we have a proprietary database called locationadvisors.net. That's what you see there in the screenshot. It's about 400 site selection consultants. We keep that database very up to date so that you don't have to, and that's essentially where your good news will be sent. We're also planning to arrange 3 to 5 virtual meetings with site selection consultants. We'll be doing that for quite a few of our clients now. It's working out well. And really want to target ones we think that are the best fit for Sugar Land and really help your team get to know them, nurture those relationships, have them be educated about Sugar Land's offerings. And then we do represent the Site Selectors Guild, so we're privy to the research that they're doing, the trends, and so forth, and we'll be sharing that with your team on a regular basis. Next slide, please. We also, I'm sorry that a lot of the words got cut off here. I must have not have saved properly, but it can be like a game. You can fill in the crossword puzzle there. But on the digital advertising front, we take a very hyper-targeted approach. You're not trying to reach everybody. You're trying to reach the C-suite and the site selection decision makers. So we'll start with a strategy. We'll take a good close look at what landing page we'll be driving the digital ads to make sure they have strong calls to action. We'll launch a Google paid search campaign, very pinpoint. Our goal will be to get Sugar Land to come up in the top 3 Google search queries when there's a relevant query. We'll do a very targeted LinkedIn campaign. You know, LinkedIn allows you to target by title, by industry, by geography, by all kinds of parameters, so that you can really, again, hyper target those you're trying to reach with messages about Sugar Land's business advantages. And then the beauty of digital advertising is continual optimization. You never rest with digital advertising. You can see exactly what's happening, and you're tweaking to get the best return on investment at all times, making sure you're generating those leads, getting those conversions, like requesting a meeting, downloading some information, and so forth. Next slide, please. And then on the digital front, the social media front, we really want to continue to ramp up Sugar Land's ability to leverage own channels and to drive positive conversation about the business climate in Sugar Land. We will, when it makes strategic sense to do so, we'll work with your team to launch a Twitter account. We'll get that set up. We'll consult on policy. We'll help model the kinds of tweets that are important for an economic development organization. And then we'll continue what we have been doing in the 6-month contract, which is really to help generate a steady drumbeat of social media on a weekly basis, with good content, with engaging content, with graphically pleasing content that will really continue to build your channels. Next slide, please. And then also part of the contract is we want to take a holistic look at all your marketing materials, sort of identify what needs and pinpoint gaps that you might have, make recommendations, and then provide creative services. We've included a bucket of hours to give us some flexibility to design things for you, to develop content for you, and we've been finding that works quite well and smoothly in this interim 6-month contract. Just those the 3 examples on the right of the slide are ones that we've. The top 2 are some digital ads, social media posts for Texas Economic Development Corporation, and the the state of Texas. It's actually a big fold out collateral piece that we did for Texas Economic Development Corporation. So that's a fun part of the job, really, is to work with your team on that. Next slide. And I remember the last time someone asked, can you really do all this in a 12-month program? And the answer is, you bet. And I give you an example from a program last year that we conducted for Metro Little Rock, Arkansas. And really had some of the same elements, of course, very different, but, we created a new website. We did national PR. We launched that got quite a bit of traction and a lot of coverage. I think over 1.6 million impressions on the national PR front. We launched a digital advertising campaign that was responsible for, I think, 65% of all traffic to their website. You really have to drive people to your website, right? And a very comprehensive site consultant outreach. In that case, it was pre-COVID. We got, I think, 6 to maybe 8 site consultants to visit Metro Little Rock for an in-person fan. We'd be aiming to do that sort of virtually for you. And then create a bunch of new collateral for them, including the overview brochure you see at the top, and some sell sheets, digital ads, and so forth. So we have a big team. We are able to, a team of experts in different areas, and we're able to execute very seamlessly. And in your team, we have a really great responsive partner. So we feel confident that we can execute everything that we have in our program. I think that wraps it up. If you want to go to the next slide. I think Teresa takes over the hard part, the budget, and I just want to say thank you very much, and I'd be happy to entertain questions at the end of this.
Thank you, Darielle. Once again, the contract is for a 12-month integrated marketing program, an overall cost of $238,000, split evenly amongst the 2 corporations, with an estimated $189,000 in professional services, and then $49,000 in the hard costs, which, as I explained earlier, we'll pay for those as those are utilized. Next slide. Our next step is to bring this contract back for your consideration during the October meeting, post that SL4B's contract consideration, which will be in mid-September. And next slide, please. If there are any clarifying questions for staff and or DCI.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, Director Porter.
Yeah, this is for Darielle. We've got a sort of a low-grade infection from a PR standpoint that never seems to go away. Some things that happened in the state of Texas and other states around the country, including Pennsylvania and areas like that. It just keeps coming up, but we got tagged with it. I'm curious if you know about it, and if you know about it, do you think site selectors know about it, and what do they think about it? And how do you address it so that they're getting, my gosh, hundreds of media hits on this particular topic that's associated with our name? And I'm not sure how 5 positive messages are going to give them assurance that this is not going to blow up in their face if they happen to move here. So I'm not a PR guy. I haven't talked to our communications people yet for their opinion. But since you're in the PR business, I'll ask you your opinion on this.
Thank you, Director Porter. I have to admit, I'm not aware of it. I would say, however, that the business of site selection consultants is very much about relationships, building trust, making sure that they understand in depth what's happening in your community, what's separating fact from fiction, and making sure that you're helping to control the messaging so that they understand you know, what's myth and what's not, essentially. So
we had very little control of the messaging. There was a newscast night before last where this guy just made stuff up, stuff that happened in 1900, and he said, "Yeah, well, it was probably this happened." I'm thinking he's not nearly old enough to know what happened.
Yeah, just whenever, you know, messaging is really important to correct and to be proactive about getting it back on track and to counter with your positive messaging, because otherwise it's just self-perpetuating. So you have to really be proactive about making sure that you're addressing facts.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead, Teresa.
And I will say that one of the positive things about having a firm like DCI partner with us on contract is that we can ask them these types of questions as those situations kind of come up throughout the course of our contract and our partnership with them, to better able position us, whether that is kind of navigating through those, you know, very difficult conversations, or probably just listening to some of our concerns and thoughts and then providing those immediate feedbacks right away to be able to respond appropriately work best.
We're also able to do, you know, a media sweep to see really how broad spread the coverage is, what the sentiment is, all kinds of things that can help shape the response.
Well, it's been coming up for a long time, and best I can tell, every time it quiets down, somebody, whether it's people from outside of Sugarland or even our own partners in this community, will stick a big poke in an anthill. So my hope would be that during the course of this contract, if we're looking at creating an image of Sugarland, I'd be very interested to hear how we're going to counteract that continued negative drumbeat.
We'll certainly look at that as one of our job ones.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
Okay, I don't see any other questions then, so thank you very much, Teresa and Daryl. And next is item 7A, the Director's Report, and we will continue with Teresa Preza, Assistant Director of Economic Development.
Just a quick update regarding the Sweet Cash. We have seen an uptake in our gift card submissions. As of Monday, we have received a total of 581 submissions, and we've distributed 1,351 gift cards to consumers and frontline workers. And that number is actually going to go up later on this week because of our contributions to our hospitals. With the combination of our initial investment plus what consumers have purchased in gift cards from various businesses, we estimate a current impact of more than $145,000 into our economy. Of note, we do have plenty of gift cards still available, which is currently our number one question, so please encourage others to participate. Also wanted to share just a couple of unique utilizations of the Sweet Cash program that we've seen. A local property management firm purchased 48 $50 gift cards, and they were keen on nominating frontline workers and volunteers. They also shared that they appreciate what the Sweet Cash program is doing for our community. Also, one of our local HOAs purchased gift cards to distribute to their volunteers in lieu of a big banquet dinner because, social distancing. So now they will have the opportunity to provide even more gift cards to the volunteers to thank them for their work. So that's the update on Sweet Cash. I also have one other kind of quick update here, and it's related to Project Orion. As you may recall, we were working on a large-scale project back in spring. We were part of the top 2 final candidates for the consideration by the company. Since then, the company announced that they would be expanding their business to Raleigh, North Carolina. This was a life science medical company, so it would be natural for them to select a biomedical ecosystem that has been built for like 30 plus years. But we did ask the site selectors to kind of provide us some feedback as to what we could do better, what worked, what didn't work, what was some of the behind the scenes conversations. And to our amazement, They shared amazing things about us. They mentioned that we were stellar in the person face-to-face presentation. And I quote, they said we won the day, which gave the company kind of like a pause or something to kind of really consider between their top 2 location choices. Sugarland, as they mentioned, was a hidden gem. That's kind of something that they referenced as well. They commended staff's responsiveness and professionalism. So using the information shared, this is a sector where we are strategizing how to best position Sugarland. Moving forward, we are looking at utilizing the feedback to build a case to attract other life science prospects. And this kind of relates back to the conversations related to the DCI contract as well. And that is the end of my report.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Teresa? Okay, well, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Kamali. Thank you all very much for coming.
Aye.
Okay, motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned.